Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vidvaram. Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padambu Janmane Savilasa Moha Graha Graseka Karmani. Okay, we'll read the verses that we covered last time, verses 16 and 17. Swayam Jyotir Bhaved Bhavatyeshaha Purosmad Bhasate Akhilat Tameva Bhantamanveti Tadbhasa Bhasyate Jagat Yenedam Janate Sarvam Tatkenanyena Janatam Vignataram Kena Vidyat Shaktam Vedyetu Sadhanam. So here we are in chapter 3 and we are looking at quotes from the Upanishads that say that we are the ultimate consciousness and that it is knowledge in itself. It does not need to be experienced as an object. It is the very, very subject. So it cannot be known by us. It cannot be thought of by us. It is us. So in verse number 16, we saw Swayam Jyotir Bhavati Eshaha. This is from Brihadaranyak Upanishad, and it talks about deep sleep. That in deep sleep, everything is shut down. Senses are shut down, mind is shut down, ego is shut down, and yet we know ourselves. We are very much aware because we don't die in deep sleep. So there's an awareness there. But who is knowing that awareness there in deep sleep? It is self-aware. So the mind is not knowing it, the senses are not knowing it, the ego is not knowing it, it is self-aware. It's called Swayam Jyotihi. It is that self-effulgent light. And then we saw in Nrasimha Tapaniya, Uttara Tapaniya Upanishad, that before all of this comes into being, the self is there. The self shines before this whole entire thing comes into being. And in fact, for us to experience anything, that consciousness must flow through the mind, through the senses, for anything to be experienced. And then finally, in the last line, Tameva Bhantam Anveti Tadbhasa Bhasyate Jagat, means on that consciousness shining, everything shines after it. We also saw in the next verse from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, verse 17, Yenedam janate sarvam, that by which everything is known, tat kena anyena janatam, what can know it? Vignataram kena vidyat, what can know the knower? So that by which the whole universe is known, how can it be known by anything else? What can know the knower? Why? Because other things, other instruments are not capable. Na shakyam. They don't have that ability to know the self. because their own fields are limited. The field of the eyes are limited, ears is for hearing, tongue is for tasting. So all of these fields are limited. And the field of the mind is also thinking. So because all of these instruments, they have limited fields, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and the mind has a limited field of thinking, it cannot know the self because the self is beyond the senses and even beyond thought. So even we talked about inference, comparison, postulation, they're all dependent on pratyaksha or direct perception, but they are also thoughts. Remember, they are also ideas. And so the self is that which is beyond them. So these things, the mind, the senses, cannot know the self because their fields are limited. Now we go to the next one. We are on verse number 18. Saveti vedyam tat sarvam, saveti vedyam tat sarvam, nānyastasyāsti vedita, nānyastasyāsti vedita, vidita viditabhyam tata, vidita viditabhyam tata, prithag bodhaswarupakam, prithag bodhaswarupakam. Saveti vedyam tat sarvam, nānyastasyāsti vedita, vidita viditabhyam tata, prithag bodhaswarupakam. So it says that saha here means that sakshi, that self, veti vedyam, that self veti, that self knows what, vedyam, what is to be known. Self knows what is to be known. Tat sarvam, all the things that are to be known. Na anyaha tasya asti, and there is nothing other which vedita, which knows that self, tasya. There is nobody to know the self. Vidita avidita bhyam tata prithak. It is different from that which is known, vidita, and different from the unknown, avidita. And it is bodhaswarupakam. It is consciousness itself. So the self knows all that is knowable, and there's no one to know it. It is consciousness or knowledge itself, and is different from both the known and the unknown. So the first line comes from Shvetashvatara Upanishad. The second line comes from Kena Upanishad. So when we say self knows all that is knowable, meaning the self illumines everything, and the same idea is presented here, that those things which are known, they cannot know the self. Because if let us say the eyes have to know the self, the eyes have to sort of disassociate themselves from the self. What I mean is this: if I have to know this bottle, I cannot be one with this bottle. I have to create an apparent duality that I know this bottle. If I have to know this bookmark, it cannot be one with me. I have to create an apparent duality that I know this bookmark. And even if we say I know my hand, I have to create an I separate from my hand to know it. It cannot really be one with me, right? So to know something as an object, it has to be disassociated from the subject. Now, if we say the senses know the self, the senses have to disassociate from consciousness to know consciousness, right? But when the senses disassociate from consciousness, they become unconscious. So they will never know consciousness. If the mind has to know consciousness, it has to disassociate from consciousness, it becomes unconscious. Then it cannot know the self. So nothing can actually know the self, and nothing can actually disassociate from the self. Nothing can make the self an object. because everything is inherently the self. And it says here that it is different from the known and unknown. And if you remember, we took this up in Kenopanishad. So there are 3 levels that we can see this. First of all, known can mean it is different from things that are known as an object. So that we have already gone through. It's different from things that are known as an object because it's not an object, it's the subject, right? And we're so used to objectifying things that we think that that's the only way to know. So it's different from the known because it's not an object, but it's also different from the unknown. Why? Because we know ourselves. We are not unknown. We are not unknown to ourselves. If somebody asks, "Are you there?" and we say yes. So we inherently, we know ourselves. We are self-aware. So it's not that it is unknown. So it's not that it's known as an object, and it is not that it is unknown because it is you. It is I. So that's the first level. Second level is known pertains to the level of the body and senses, right? So the body, the senses, the mind, all of this is in the realm of the known. The sense objects and the thoughts that we perceive, they're in the realm of the known because we know the things that we perceive, we know what we're thinking, they're in the realm of the known. And what is in the realm of the unknown is avidya, or that ignorance is in the realm of the unknown. That is not known to us or not directly perceived by our thoughts or by our senses. And so the self, the Ātman, is beyond the known, the realm of the body, the senses and mind, and beyond the unknown, that realm of ignorance. The third way we can see this is known is something that we know, that we have knowledge of, and unknown is something that we are ignorant of. So known are things that we know. We know people, we know places, we know feelings, emotions, we know ideas. Those can be known. And unknown, we don't know certain places or people or ideas. Sometimes things are a mystery to us. Sometimes in the universe, things are a mystery to us. But what happens is the known can become unknown. Sometimes we can forget. We might have been somewhere to a place before and all of a sudden we forget that we've been there. We don't know how to go there anymore. So the known can become unknown and the unknown can become known. Something unknown can be discovered or learned by us. But the self is that which illumines both the known and the unknown. So it's apart from the known or unknown because again, these are in the realms of the mind. Whether I know something or whether I don't know something, it's still a thought. It's still in the realm of the mind. And the self is absolutely beyond that. And in the commentary of Kenopanishad, it says something so beautiful. It says, that which is known is impure. Why is it impure? It's because it gives us sorrow. It gives us sorrow because anything that's known is temporary. Any experience, any knowledge that we have, it's temporary because it depends on the experiencer. So it's not going to be there all the time. Anything that is known, anything that is experienced, anything that is perceived, it's not going to be there all the time. And so it gives us sorrow. And that which gives us sorrow, we want to give up. Heya, we want to give up because it gives us sorrow. And that which is unknown, we want to obtain. We want to know it. We want to attain it. We want to gain it because it makes us feel whole. But the Ātman is beyond that. It's not anything that we can give up and it's not anything that we can attain also. So this is a side note in that commentary, that it is not something we can give up, It's not known, and it's not unknown that it can be attained. It's beyond giving up an attainment. It is you yourself. You yourself. So in this way, in Panchadashi, now he gives all of these quotations of Shruti. He gives all of these quotations of Shruti, of the Upanishads. And in some way, he also has given a yukti, a logic, saying that you are saying there's no consciousness, but I am giving you a simple logic that if everything is experienced, there must be an experiencer. There must be an experiencer. And the essence of that experiencer is consciousness. And that's the logic. It's not that there's nothing there. So he has provided for us quotes from the Upanishads. He has provided for us logic, yukti, and anubhuti also. He says that the self is self-aware. It is you. But if somebody still says that I don't experience consciousness, I don't know what consciousness is, then he says this in verse number 19. So this is as though Swami Vidyāraṇya ji is getting angry. He says, Bodhe-pyanubhavo yasya, Bodhe-pyanubhavo yasya, na kathanchana jayate, na kathanchana jayate, tam katham bodhayet shastram, tam katham bodhayet shastram, loshtam narasamakritim, loshtam narasamakritim, bodhepyanubhavo yasya, na kathanchana jayate, tam katham bodhayet shastram, loshtam narasamakritim. So he says, look, bodhe api, even though that consciousness, anubhava, is ever experienced, even though that consciousness is ever experienced, yasya na katanchana jayate. Somebody says, oh, I have not experienced consciousness. I don't understand what consciousness is. I have no idea what it is. Tam katham bodhayet shastram. How are scriptures going to teach this person? Loshtam narasamakritim. This person is like loshta. Loshta means clay. Narasama means like a person, like a man of clay. Akritim, like a man in the form of clay. So how can a man teach scriptures to one who is a man only in form, but who is so dull as to not experience what conscious is in every act of knowing a thing? So Swami Vidyāraṇya ji says, I've explained to you so many times, you still don't get it? You are consciousness. You are consciousness. You are that very thing. You are the subject. Why don't you get it? How much more do I need to tell you? And the funny thing is, if you say, I don't know what consciousness is, you have to be conscious to say it. Right? So even if you say, I don't know what consciousness is, you have to be conscious. What an irony. And in every single knowing, in every experience of knowing, consciousness is present. How is it that you don't see it? How is it that you don't recognize it? And he says, the fact that you don't recognize it is like saying this. Okay? So now he's giving a deeper example. He's like, it's like you're doing this. Verse number 20. Jifva mestina vetyuktihi, Jifva mestina vetyuktihi, lajjaye kevalam yatha, lajjaye kevalam yatha, na buddhyate maya bodhaha, na buddhyate maya bodhaha, bodhavya iti tadrishi, bodhavya iti tadrishi, jivva mesti na vedyuktihi, lajjaye kevalam yatha, na buddhyate maya bodhaha, bodhavya iti tadrishi. He says, Jivva me asti nava iti means, do I have a tongue or not? Uktihi, this expression, do I have a tongue or not? Lajjaye kevalam yatha, like this is so shameful. It's so shameful for me to say, do I have a tongue or not? Huh? Na buddhyate maya bodhaha, I don't know consciousness. Bodhavyaha, I have to know consciousness. Iti tadrishi. It is like saying, I don't know consciousness, I have to know consciousness. As it is shameful for a man to express doubt if he has a tongue or not, so also it is shameful to say, I do not know what consciousness is, I must know it now. So imagine if somebody says, I don't have a tongue. I don't know if I have a tongue or not. To say this, we need a tongue, right? It's so shameful. In the same way, he's saying, to say that I don't know what consciousness is, we have to be conscious. We have to be conscious. So what is the problem here? The problem here is we're not paying attention. That's a problem. In Kenopanishad, it says, Pratibodha Viditam Matam. In every thought, there is consciousness. In every thought. How are we experiencing our thoughts? How are we aware of our thoughts? That awareness is consciousness. That awareness is consciousness. Whenever there's a thought there, there's something aware of it. That awareness is consciousness. But it is like, what do we see here? We see a bookmark, right? Actually, we see a bookmark plus light. Plus light. What do we see here? We see a bottle plus light. What do we see here? We say a paperweight plus light. So when we see things, there's light in and through everything. But we don't pay attention to the light. Our attention solely goes on the object and we disregard the light. We disregard the light. We don't know that there's light. We don't understand that there's light. We forget about the light. We just pay attention to the object. So in every seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, consciousness is flowing through that. It's flowing through that. In every seeing, there's consciousness. Every hearing, every smelling, every tasting, every thinking, consciousness is flowing through everything. But we have not turned our attention to it. Our attention is in just what is being seen, what is being heard, what is being tasted, what is being touched. And in fact, bondage is nothing but paying attention to the observed instead of the observer. That's all that bondage is. We pay attention to the observed instead of the observer. So because our attention is not there, there is tension. When we don't pay attention, there is tension. It's like nobody recognizes space, but our attention goes on thunder and lightning. Immediately lightning we recognize, thunder we hear, but space we don't really pay attention to. And without space, lightning and thunder can't exist. When we're reading a book, we look at all the words, all the letters, but we don't pay attention to the paper. Without the paper, the book cannot exist. When we watch a movie, we pay attention to the characters. But without the screen, the characters can't exist. So because not only are we used to objectifying things, but we are also used to just paying attention to sight, sound, smell, touch, thoughts. We're so used to just paying attention to things that have some kind of form and sound and touch. We are so used to paying attention to thoughts that we forget to pay attention to that which illumines them. So because our attention is not turned towards it, we say, oh, I don't know consciousness. I don't know consciousness. And the worst part is we feel that bodhavyaha, I have to know consciousness. I have to realize this truth. That in itself is a delusion because you are truth. That whole roundabout path to realization is a roundabout path. It's because we feel that we don't know the self. That's why we have to go through it. It is like the student meeting the teacher, and saying, how do I realize the self? And the teacher says, it's simple. Just wake up from your dream. You're dreaming. Just wake up. And the student says, no, it can't be that simple. It can't be that simple. It's not just waking up. The teacher says, okay, if you don't want to wake up, walk 10 more miles in your dream. Walk 10 more miles. Do a little bit of sadhana. Walk 10 more miles in your dream. And then we'll see. And after 10 miles, the student goes back to the teacher and says, how do you realize the truth? The teacher says the same thing. You just have to wake up. And the student says, no, I don't think so. It doesn't feel like it. I don't feel like it. The teacher says, walk 10 more miles. And so the student ends up walking miles and miles and miles and miles in the dream. But all the student really has to do is just wake up. Just wake up. We don't have to know consciousness. We are consciousness. Just wake up to it. And the same message is being given in all the things that we're studying. The same message is being given. But we are walking in the dream because we're not ready yet. And at some point it will hit us. All we have to do is just wake up. We just have to detach from that body, mind, intellect, ego. It's just a shift. There was one Zen master, and somebody came to see him and wanted to look at the monastery, look at all parts of the monastery. And so the Zen master showed him, gave him a tour, showed him, the different rooms. And he kept asking, what do you do? What do you do here? So the Zen master showed the bedroom. This is where we sleep. And then this visitor said, oh, he pointed at something, the kitchen. The Zen master showed him the kitchen. He said, what do you do here? Okay, this is where we cook. And then the student saw the garden. What do you do there? And the Zen master said, that's where we grow plants and everything. And the student saw this beautiful temple and said, what do you do there? And the Zen master just ignored him and pretended not to hear him. And then Zen master started showing him other things, the bathroom, the office. He said, this is the bathroom, this is the office. The student said, no, what do you do there in the temple? The Zen master just ignored him and said, okay, let me show you the storage closet. This is where we store things. This is the bookstore. And the student again asked, no, I want to see the temple. The Zen master said, I cannot show you that. And this visitor said, why not? And the Zen master said, because we don't do anything there. That is a place of being. That's where we just be. So this bondage is really us moving from being to doing. The minute we feel we are the doer, we have to achieve this, even if it's liberation. I have to achieve liberation. I have to become enlightened. I have to do this with my life. I have to do that with my life. We have moved from being to doing. That ego, even that ego wants the success of enlightenment. How crazy is that ego? But actually, if we just let go of that ego, we will find that everything is in perfect order. Everything just moves. Everything just flows. Don't worry. Sometimes people worry, okay, but what about my family? What about children? What about work? Things will happen exactly as they need to happen. The body will do what it has to do. The mind will do what it has to do. You don't need to worry because the body has a rhythm. Whether you like it or not, the body pulls us to take a bath, isn't it? It's not that we make a mental thought, I have to take a bath, the body just pulls you to take a bath, right? The mind pulls us to work. The mind pulls us to relationships and everything like that. So people sometimes worry that if I step back as a witness, what will happen to everything? Everything will happen. The body, mind will do what it has to do. But it will do what it has to do in a very ego-free state, with complete detachment. That is enlightenment. So it's not that I have to know the self. I have to become enlightened. I have to become realized. That pressure, that strain is ignorance. That just being is what is our nature. And that's also freeing. Enlightenment should not feel like a strain. It should not also feel like an achievement. It's just a recognition. That's all. But if somebody says, I still want to experience consciousness, despite all of this, despite all this message that Swami Vidyāraṇya ji is saying, somebody says, I still want to experience consciousness. Can you help me? So Swami Vidyāraṇya ji says, I have something for you. Don't worry, I have something for you. It's verse number 21 now. Yasmin asti loke, yasmin asti loke, bodhastattadupekshane, bodhastattadupekshane, yadbodhamatram tad brahma, yadbodhamatram tad brahma, ityevam dhir brahma nishchayah, ityevam dhir brahma nishchayah, yasmin asti loke, bodhastattadupekshane, yadbodhamatram tad brahma, ityevam dhir brahma nishchayah. So, yasmin asti loke. In whatever bodha, in whatever objects that are perceived in this world. Yasmin asti loke bodha. Tat upekshane. Dismiss them. Tat, those objects, upekshane. You dismiss those objects. And what happens? Yad bodha matram tad brahma. That Brahman, pure consciousness alone, bodha matra, pure consciousness alone, that Brahman, which is pure consciousness alone, that remains. Iti evam, and this is called dihi brahma nishchaya. This is called the determination or the recognition of the nature of Brahman. So from whatever objects are perceived, dismiss the objects. And what remains is the pure consciousness, awareness only. That is Brahman. Such an understanding is called the determination of the nature of Brahman. So let us say that somebody says, I still want to experience this consciousness, even if it's ever experienced. So, as we had seen before also, that consciousness is ever experienced, but it becomes extremely evident when the thoughts are silenced. So consciousness becomes extremely evident when the thoughts are silenced. See, a thought is nothing but consciousness plus object. Gurudev Swami Chinmayanandaji gave us this formula that thought is nothing but consciousness plus object. So when consciousness rather illumines an object, that is thought. So thought, when we minus the object, what remains is consciousness. What remains is consciousness. When the thought minus object, what remains is consciousness. So, like this, I have this bottle thought, right? Then I have this bookmark thought. Then I have this paperweight thought. Then I have this book thought. I have this book thought. So I have all these thoughts, one after the other, one after the other. They're coming. So what it's saying here is upeksha. Upeksha means not dismissing them like violently, not like, oh, object, go away from my mind. Not that kind of thing, because the more we try to say, oh, I don't want to think of this bookmark, I will think of this bookmark, right? You know that when they say don't think of a white elephant, the white elephant comes. So the dismissing is not that I don't want to think of this thought, or I don't want to think of this person or this situation or this experience. Thus, dismissing is actually a defocusing. So what happens is that this when I defocus from this, it's kind of like you zoom out, defocus from it, and you shift the attention to that which illumines it, this gets dropped. So with every object, yasmin asti loke bodha tad upekshane. With every object, just don't pay too much attention to the object. All we're trying to do is shift it. Just detract, defocus from the object and turn towards the self. And what is detracting from the object is the mind. So the mind is detracting from the object. That is true. But when the mind turns and focuses, it merges into the self and you alone remain. So that's where the self becomes self-evident, because the object is lost, it's dropped, the thought is dropped, and only you remain as you are. That's what this means. This is called Brahma Nishchaya. This is called the determination of Brahman. Just letting go of all objects and turning the mind to the subject and dissolving in the subject itself, consciousness becomes self-evident. And then after that, one should not anymore have a doubt of consciousness, because the whole time we're experiencing consciousness with a thought, with an object, with a person, with a place. So it can be understandable that we have a doubt about it. Okay, we can understand that. But once we recognize it as we are, self-evident, then after that there should be no doubt at all. That is the way to determine it. Okay? So now I will just revise what we've done today, just so we can have the thought flow. And then we can discuss if there are any questions. Okay? So what we did today is verses 18, we reviewed 18 to verse 21. And in verse 18, it said that the self that is all knows everything that is knowable, and nothing knows the self. And the self is beyond the known and beyond the unknown. Beyond the known because it cannot be known as an object. It is beyond the unknown because it is ourselves. We are not unknown to ourselves. It is beyond any known realm of perception and thought, and it is beyond the unknown, which to us is ignorance. It is beyond the known, anything that we actually physically know or through our minds know, and it is beyond anything that we don't know. So the self is that which illumines all of this. And then, in spite of that, if somebody says that, I still don't know the self, well, how can you do that? Swami Vidyāraṇya ji says it's like you're a clay form of a man or a person. Because consciousness is in and through every single thing, like light is in and through every object. It's just that our attention is not there. And further, he gives an example. He says it's like you are speaking and saying, do I have a tongue or not? Well, to say that you need a tongue. So to say that I don't know consciousness, I haven't experienced consciousness, consciousness has to be flowing through you to say that. So he says that is unacceptable. But if one still feels like, no, I really need to experience consciousness, okay, then the way to experience consciousness is to just be as you are. In any object or thought that comes, defocus from that, shift the mind's attention towards the source and dissolve in that. Remain as you are. Consciousness will be self-evident. So in actuality, there is no bodhavya. There's nothing to be known. You are already that. Don't go on some wild goose chase thinking that enlightenment will come in some point in time. You are that. Just remain as you are and let go of that ego. And let that divinity just function through you. So this is in essence his message. More we will take up next week. Okay, just say the closing prayer. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.